The day began like any other in the small ranger station at the edge of Germany's Black Forest. The morning sun barely broke through the dense canopy of ancient pines and oaks that had stood for hundreds of years. Klaus Weber, a senior forest ranger with 23 years of experience, poured his coffee into a thermos and checked his equipment one last time. At 52, his face weathered by years in the outdoors, Klaus knew the forest better than most people knew their own backyards. "I'll be checking the northern trails today," he told his colleague Petra, who was busied updating trail maps at her desk. "There have been reports of damaged fencing near the old hunting grounds." Petra nodded without looking up from her work. "Just be back before dark. Storm's coming in tonight." Klaus smiled at her concern. "Always am, aren't I?" That was the last anyone saw of him that day. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds gathered above the forest, much earlier than the weather service had predicted. The first fat raindrops began to fall as Petra checked the time again. Klaus always called in at 3 o'clock without fail. Today, her radio remained silent. "Northern sector, this is base." "Klaus, do you copy?" she called, trying to keep the worry from her voice. Static answered her. She tried again and again. By 4:30, with the rain now pouring down in sheets, Petra alerted Station Chief Thomas. "He's never missed a check-in before," she explained, her fingers nervously tapping against the radio. "Not in all the years I've worked with him." Thomas, a broad-shouldered man with 30 years of forestry service, frowned deeply. Maybe his radio got wet in this downpour. But they both knew Klaus carried a backup radio and a satellite phone for emergencies. Something was wrong. As darkness fell, the small ranger station buzzed with growing concern. 4 other rangers had already gone out to check Klaus's planned route, but had to turn back when the storm intensified, bringing lightning that cracked against the hillsides and made further searching too dangerous. "We'll need more help," Thomas decided, looking at the weather radar showing the storm would pass by midnight. "If he's not back by morning, we're calling in the K9 unit." Throughout the long night, the remaining staff took turns watching the road leading to the station, hoping to see the beam of Klaus's flashlight cutting through the darkness. Each hour that passed without word made the knot in their stomachs tighten. Klaus was no beginner who might have gotten lost. He'd helped write the emergency procedures they were now following. He knew every stream, ridge, and valley in his sector. If he couldn't make it back, it meant something or someone was preventing him. At dawn, with the storm past but the forest floor still wet and glistening, Thomas made the call to regional headquarters. "We have a missing ranger, possibly injured, requesting immediate K9 assistance." Brigitte Müller, the search coordinator with the regional emergency response team, arrived within the hour. Her no-nonsense attitude and efficiency brought focus to the increasingly worried ranger station. "Show me his last known route," she instructed, spreading a topographical map across the main table. Petra traced the path with her finger, pointing out where Klaus had planned to inspect the damaged fencing. "This area here has some treacherous ravines," Thomas added, "if he fell." "Let's not jump to conclusions," Brigitte interrupted. "The K9 unit will be here within the hour. Those dogs can find people in far worse conditions than this." As if summoned by her words, they heard vehicles approaching outside. Through the window, they watched as a specialized van pulled up, bearing the insignia of the Regional Search and Rescue K9 unit. "Those dogs are our best hope now," Brigitte said, already moving toward the door. "If Klaus is out there, injured, trapped, or otherwise, they'll find him." What no one said, what they all feared but kept to themselves, was that the northern sector had seen strange occurrences in recent months. Unusual animal movements, disturbed research cameras, and reports from hikers about feeling washed. Klaus had dismissed these as normal forest phenomena, but now, with his unexpected disappearance, those reports took on a more ominous tone. As the K9 handlers unloaded their gear and their German shepherds surveyed their new surroundings with alert, intelligent eyes, no one could have guessed what these remarkable animals would discover in the depths of the ancient forest, or how their actions would challenge everything we thought we knew about animal intelligence. The early morning mist hung low over the forest floor as 2 vehicles pulled up to the ranger station. The clock on the wall showed 4:30 a.m. From the first truck stepped Dieter, a tall man with a weathered face and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen it all. Behind him, the large German shepherd named Max jumped out, his alert eyes taking in the surroundings immediately. From the second vehicle came Anna, her dark hair pulled back tightly in a practical ponytail. She opened the back door and out leaped Hira, a slightly smaller but equally impressive German shepherd. The two dogs stood attentively at their handlers' sides, neither barking nor fidgeting, a telltale sign of their professional training. "These dogs are special," Dieter explained as he shook hands with Thomas, the station chief. "Max has found hikers buried under avalanches. Hira once tracked a lost child through a thunderstorm after other teams had given up." Anna added, "They've both been working search and rescue for 6 years. If your ranger is in these woods, they'll find him." Thomas nodded gratefully. "We've prepared Klaus's gear for scent tracking." He handed over a cap that Klaus wore regularly during his patrols. Inside the station, Brigitte spread out detailed maps of the northern sector. "The area to cover is large," she explained, pointing to the marked zones. "We've divided it into search grids. Regular teams will take these outer sections, but we need the dogs for the dense middle area where we've had no luck." Dieter studied the map carefully. "What's in this region?" he asked, pointing to a particularly dense area of forest. "Old-growth trees, some nearly 300 years old," Thomas replied. "Some steep ravines to the east. There's an abandoned hunting cabin somewhere in there too, but it's been empty for years." While the humans discussed strategy, the dogs sat nearby, seemingly understanding the gravity of the situation. Max's ears perked up whenever Klaus's name was mentioned, already associating the missing ranger with their upcoming task. Anna knelt beside the dogs, offering them water before the long day ahead. "They can sense our urgency," she said quietly. "They know someone's life depends on them today." As dawn broke, the team made final preparations. Dieter and Anna put special tracking harnesses on their dogs, a signal that it was time to work. The dogs' demeanor changed instantly, their posture becoming more focused, more alert. "We use these harnesses only for search missions," Dieter explained. "The moment they feel it go on, they understand their job." Thomas handed over Klaus's cap, which both handlers allowed their dogs to smell thoroughly. Max inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring as he committed the scent to memory. Hira did the same, then looked up at Anna as if to say, "I'm ready." The rangers provided radios tuned to their emergency frequency. "Check in every 30 minutes, Brigitte instructed. "If the weather turns or you find anything, we need to know immediately." The small crowd of rangers watched as the K9 team headed toward the forest edge. Hope showed on their tired faces. For many, it had been a sleepless night of worry. At the tree line, Dieter gave Max the command to seek, while Anna did the same for Hira. The dogs immediately lowered their noses to the ground, moving in widening circles, searching for any trace of Klaus's scent. For 10 minutes, the dogs worked methodically, their handlers staying quiet to avoid distraction. Then suddenly, Max lifted his head and gave a soft bark. He picked up something. Hira rushed to his side, confirmed the scent, and both dogs looked in the same direction, toward the oldest part of the forest. "They've got something," Dieter called back to the waiting team. "We're moving northeast." The dogs pulled forward eagerly, their powerful bodies moving with purpose through the underbrush. Their handlers followed, trusting their animals' instincts completely. The forest grew denser as they advanced, the morning light barely penetrating the thick canopy above. "These dogs have saved 17 lives between them," Anna told Thomas as they navigated a particularly difficult stretch. "They don't give up, even when conditions are terrible." Hour after hour, the dogs led them deeper into rarely visited parts of the forest. They crossed streams, climbed hills, and pushed through thorny thickets. The handlers checked their GPS regularly. They were now 5 miles from where they had started, in territory so remote that even experienced rangers rarely ventured there. Little did they know that what Max and Hira would find would be far more disturbing than anyone had imagined, and what the dogs would do next would leave everyone questioning everything they thought they knew about animal intelligence. 6 hours into the search, the team had pushed deep into territory that few people ever visited. The forest here felt different, older, somehow quieter, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. The search party had grown tired, their legs heavy from climbing over fallen logs and pushing through thick underbrush. Dieter wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool air. We should take a short break, he suggested, reaching for his water bottle. But before he could even unscrew the cap, Max's behavior suddenly changed. The German shepherd's ears perked forward, his body becoming rigid with attention. Then came a low, urgent bark, not his usual "I found something" signal, but something different. Something that made Dieter straighten up immediately. "What is it, boy?" he asked, all traces of fatigue vanishing from his voice. Max barked again, more insistently this time, then took off through a dense patch of ferns. Hera, who had been sniffing around a fallen tree trunk, jerked her head up and followed without waiting for Anna's command. "They've got something," Anna called out, already rushing after the dogs. The rest of the team followed, hearts pounding with both hope and fear. The dogs' barking grew louder, more frantic. It echoed through the trees, bouncing back from all directions, making it seem like there were not 2 but 20 German shepherds in the forest. The team emerged into a small clearing and stopped dead in their tracks. In the center stood an enormous oak tree, its trunk wider than 3 men standing side by side. Its gnarled branches reached up like ancient arms stretching toward the sky. And there, bound to the massive trunk with heavy metal chains, was Klaas. "Oh my God," Thomas whispered, his face draining of color. The ranger hung limply against the chains, his uniform torn and dirty. His head drooped forward onto his chest. For one terrible moment, everyone thought they were too late. Then Klaas lifted his head slowly, his eyes finding them through swollen lids. He was alive. The team rushed forward as Max and Hera circled the tree, their barking changing to high-pitched whines of distress. Something about this place clearly upset them. "Get water," Dieter shouted, already working on the chains that bound Klaas to the tree. "And radio for medical backup." Anna knelt beside Klaas, gently lifting his head to give him water. His lips were cracked from dehydration, his skin pale and clammy. "You're safe now," she said softly. "We've got you." Klaas tried to speak but could only manage a hoarse whisper. He'd been without water for nearly 24 hours. As the team worked to free him, Thomas noticed something disturbing. Carved into the bark of the oak tree, just above where Klaas had been chained, were strange symbols, circles inside triangles, lines crossing in odd patterns, markings that looked ancient and purposeful. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, touching one of the symbols. Even more unsettling was what they found on the ground. Arranged in a perfect circle around the tree were small animal bones, a deliberate pattern that sent chills down everyone's spines. This was no random attack or accident. Someone had done this on purpose, following some kind of ritual. The medical kit from their packs provided emergency blankets and first aid supplies. As they treated Klaas for exposure and dehydration, they kept glancing nervously at the surrounding forest. Whoever had done this might still be nearby, watching them. "We need to get him out of here fast," Thomas said, helping to wrap Klaas in an emergency blanket. The ranger was conscious but confused, his eyes darting around as if searching for something or someone. But the most puzzling thing was happening with the dogs. Instead of staying close to their handlers as they'd been trained to do, Max and Hera had begun behaving strangely. They paced the edges of the clearing in perfect synchronization, stopping occasionally to stare intently into the dense forest, their ears forward, bodies tense. "What's wrong with them?" Thomas asked, noticing the unusual behavior. Dieter shook his head, equally confused. "I've never seen them act like this before." As the team prepared a makeshift stretcher from branches and jackets, the dogs continued their odd patrol, keeping their distance from the oak tree as if they couldn't bear to be near it. Their behavior was methodical, deliberate, almost as if they were standing guard. None of the humans noticed when both dogs stopped simultaneously and turned their heads toward the same spot in the forest. None of them saw the brief shadow that moved between distant trees. None of them realized yet that finding Klaas was only the beginning of something much, much stranger. With Klaas now free from the chains, the rescue team worked quickly to assess his condition. Thomas carefully checked his colleague's vital signs, while Anna prepared a glucose solution to help with his dehydration. The ranger was weak but conscious, his eyes now more alert as the water and sugar mixture revived him. "Who did this to you?" Dieter asked gently, kneeling beside the injured man. Klaas shook his head weakly, didn't see, face covered, talked about forest spirits. His words came out broken and hoarse. While the humans focused on tending to Klaus, something remarkable was happening with the German shepherds. Instead of staying close to their handlers as they normally would during a rescue, Max and Hira had taken up positions around the clearing. They moved with purpose, circling the area in a pattern that seemed almost planned. "Max, come," Dieter called, noticing his dog had wandered nearly 15 feet away. For the first time in their 6-year partnership, Max completely ignored the command. The German shepherd paused, looked directly at Dieter for a moment, then deliberately turned away and continued his patrol of the clearing's edge. "What on earth?" Dieter muttered, genuinely shocked. Max had never disobeyed a direct command before, not once in thousands of hours of training and fieldwork. Hannah noticed Hira doing the same thing, moving in perfect synchronization with Max, but on the opposite side of the clearing. "Something's really bothering them," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "I've never seen Hira act this way." Thomas looked up from where he was preparing Klaus for transport. "Maybe they smell something we don't?" Another person nearby. The dogs continued their unusual behavior as the team constructed a makeshift stretcher from branches and jackets. Every few minutes, both animals would stop, raise their heads, and look toward the same spot in the forest, as if they were communicating with each other without making a sound. "It's like they're guarding us," Anna observed, watching as Hira systematically covered the northern edge of the clearing before circling back. Dieter nodded slowly. "But guarding us from what?" As they carefully lifted Klaus onto the stretcher, the ranger grabbed Thomas's arm with surprising strength. "The symbols," he whispered urgently. He said they would protect him, make him invisible to us. Thomas patted Klaus's hand reassuringly. "Don't worry about that now. We need to get you to a hospital." But Klaus wasn't finished. "The dogs," he continued, his eyes now wide with remembered fear. He said, "Animals can see what humans can't." A chill ran down Thomas's spine despite the warming day. He glanced at the German shepherds, still maintaining their strange patrol pattern around the group. "Let's move out," he said firmly, pushing away the unsettling thought. "We need to get Klaus medical attention as soon as possible." As 4 team members carefully lifted the stretcher, Anna tried once more to call Hira back to her side. The dog looked at her, whined softly as if torn between duty and instinct, then returned to her self-appointed task of guarding the group. "I don't understand," Anna said, shaking her head in confusion. "This goes against everything in their training." Dieter watched the dogs with growing amazement. "Look at how they're moving," he said quietly. "It's coordinated. They're deliberately covering different areas, maximizing their visibility of the surroundings." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "It's almost like they're thinking it through." As the team began the difficult journey back through the forest, both German shepherds took up positions, Max at the front of the group and Hira at the rear. They moved with heightened alertness, their ears constantly swiveling to catch any sound, their noses testing the air for unfamiliar scents. "They're escorting us," Thomas said with disbelief, "like an honor guard." Dieter nodded slowly, all like soldiers protecting a vulnerable group. After 20 years of working with search and rescue dogs, he'd never witnessed anything like this. This isn't just trained behavior. They're problem-solving, adapting to a situation they've never encountered before. What none of them realized as they made their careful way back through the ancient trees was that the dogs' extraordinary behavior was about to save their lives. Because something was indeed watching them from the shadows, something that had chained Klaus to that tree and was now following their slow progress through the forest, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The journey back through the forest was slow and difficult. Each step had to be carefully measured as the team carried Klaus on the makeshift stretcher over uneven ground. The ranger drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally mumbling about shadows and voices in the trees. "How much further?" Thomas asked, adjusting his grip on the stretcher. The weight was beginning to take its toll on everyone. Dieter checked his GPS. "About 2 miles to the access road where the medical team can meet us." As they navigated around a fallen tree, both German shepherds suddenly stopped moving. Max and Hira stood perfectly still, their bodies rigid, eyes fixed on the dense undergrowth ahead. The fur along their spines rose in stiff ridges. "What's wrong with them?" one of the rescue team members whispered. Before anyone could answer, both dogs began to growl, a deep, threatening sound that none of their handlers had ever heard them make during a rescue operation. "Something's very wrong," Anna said quietly, reaching for the radio clipped to her belt. "These dogs are trained never to show aggression during rescues." The team carefully set down the stretcher. Dieter motioned for everyone to remain still as he tried once more to call Max to his side. Again, the dog ignored him completely, instead moving to position himself between the humans and whatever had caught his attention in the forest ahead. Hera did the same, her movements perfectly mirroring Max's, though they were 15 feet apart. The two dogs had created a living barrier in front of the rescue team. "I don't like this," Thomas muttered, scanning the trees ahead. Not one bit. The forest had gone eerily silent. No birds called, no insects buzzed. It was as if everything in the woods was holding its breath, waiting. Then, without warning, the undergrowth rustled and parted. A figure burst from between the trees, moving with startling speed toward the group. The person wore dark clothing and a face covering that obscured their features. Most alarming was the glint of metal in their hand, a large hunting knife with a serrated edge. Several team members shouted in alarm, stumbling backward. Thomas moved to place himself in front of Claus, reaching for the small canister of bear spray on his belt, the only defensive tool the Rangers carried. But before the attacker could reach them, before Thomas could even uncap his spray, something extraordinary happened. Max and Hera exploded into action with a coordination that seemed impossible. Instead of both charging forward, as trained attack dogs might, they split apart, each dog taking a different angle. Max circled wide to the right, while Hera swept around to the left, a pincer movement that no one had ever taught them. The attacker hesitated for a split second, confused by the dog's approach. That moment of uncertainty was all the German shepherds needed. They struck simultaneously, Max going low for the legs, while Hera leaped high, aiming for the arm that held the knife. The precision of their attack was breathtaking. They didn't bite to wound as police dogs might. Instead, they used their bodies as battering rams, knocking the attacker off balance and to the ground. The knife flew from the person's hand, landing harmlessly in a patch of ferns several feet away. "Get the weapon," Dieter shouted, already rushing forward. Even more remarkable was what happened next. Once the attacker was down, neither dog went for a killing bite. Instead, they positioned themselves on either side, growling whenever the person tried to move, but not inflicting further harm. They had neutralized the threat without causing serious injury, something they had never been trained to do. This is impossible," Anna whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "This is tactical thinking, coordinated strategy." Thomas grabbed the fallen knife while two other team members moved to secure the attacker. As they pulled back the hood and face covering, there was a collective gasp of recognition. "It's Lucas," Thomas said, his voice hollow with shock. "Lucas Bauer. He used to work at the Eastern Station until Claus reported him for poaching," one of the team finished. "I remember now. He was fired about 6 months ago." Lucas glared up at them, his face twisted with hate. "He had no right to interfere," he spat. "The forest was mine before any of you came along." All the while, Max and Hera maintained their positions, their eyes never leaving Lucas, their bodies still tensed and ready. The rescue team stared in amazement at the two dogs who had just performed a maneuver that would have impressed Special Forces soldiers. "How did they know to do that?" someone finally asked. "How did they know he was coming?" Dieter shook his head slowly. "I've worked with search and rescue dogs for 20 years, he said. "I've never seen anything like this. Never." What none of them realized yet was that this was just the beginning of the questions they would have about Max and Hera, questions that would soon challenge everything experts thought they knew about canine intelligence. The medical team finally reached them at the forest access road, quickly loading Claus into an ambulance. The police arrived shortly after, taking a handcuffed Lucas into custody. As the sirens faded into the distance, the rescue team found themselves sitting in exhausted silence at the edge of the forest, trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. "I still can't believe what those dogs did," Thomas said, watching as Max and Hera now lay calmly at their handler's feet, looking for all the world like ordinary, tired German shepherds. Dieter stroked Max's head thoughtfully. "I've never seen anything remotely like it. That pincer movement, that's advanced tactical thinking. We never taught them that. It's like they were communicating with each other without making a sound, Anna added, still visibly shaken by the day's events. She offered Hira a drink from her water bottle, which the dog lapped up gratefully. A police officer approached the group, notebook in hand. "We need statements from all of you," he explained. "But first, can you tell me more about this Lucas character?" Thomas sighed heavily. "Lucas Bauer. He worked as a junior ranger about 2 years ago. Claus caught him hunting illegally in protected areas and reported him. Lucas lost his job over it." "Seems like an extreme reaction for getting fired," the officer remarked. "There was always something off about him," Thomas replied. "He was obsessed with old folklore about the forest, kept talking about ancient spirits and rituals that were practiced here hundreds of years ago." The officer's radio crackled. He stepped away to answer it, then returned with a serious expression. "They've just searched Bauer's cabin in the Eastern Valley. You're going to want to hear this." The team listened in growing horror as the officer described what had been found. The small wooden cabin where Lucas lived alone was filled with disturbing items. Walls covered with the same strange symbols that had been carved into the oak tree, animal bones arranged in patterns across the floor, dozens of notebooks filled with writings about forest spirits and ancient sacrificial rituals. "There's a shrine in the main room," the officer continued. "Pictures of the old oak tree where you found Claus. Seems Bauer believed it was some kind of sacred site." "So this wasn't just about revenge against Claus," Dieter said slowly. "This was some kind of ritual." The officer nodded grimly. According to his journals, he planned to chain Claus to the tree as an offering to what he called the old gods of the forest. He was going to return at moonrise to complete the ritual. A heavy silence fell over the group as they realized how close Claus had come to death. If the dogs hadn't found him when they did. "They found something else too," the officer added, checking his notes. "Drawings of German shepherds with X through them. Seems Bauer specifically feared that dogs might interfere with his plans. He wrote that animals could see through the veil or something like that." Anna and Dieter exchanged puzzled glances. "That matches what Claus was mumbling about," Thomas remarked. "He said something about animals seeing what humans can't." As evening approached, the team returned to the ranger station to complete their reports. The story of Claus's rescue and the dog's remarkable behavior had already spread throughout the regional forestry department. People kept coming into the room just to look at Max and Hira, who had now returned to being perfectly normal, well-trained search dogs. "I've sent the video from my body camera to the university," Dieter said, closing his laptop. Like all search and rescue personnel, he wore a small camera during operations to document findings. "Dr. Hoffman in the Animal Behavior Department wants to analyze it. He says he's never heard of search dogs acting the way Max and Hira did." Anna scratched behind Hira's ears, making the dog's tail thump happily against the floor. "Do you think they somehow knew Lucas was dangerous? That he was going to attack us?" "I don't know," Dieter admitted. "But they definitely sensed something we didn't." Later that evening, as they loaded the dogs into their vehicles to head home, Thomas approached with 2 large rawhide bones. "A little thank you gift," he said, handing them to Dieter and Anna. "Those dogs saved not just Claus's life today, but probably all of ours too." As they drove away from the ranger station, the setting sun cast long shadows through the trees. In the back of Dieter's truck, Max stood with his front paws on the edge of the carrier, watching the forest recede into the distance. For just a moment, anyone looking closely might have thought there was something in his gaze that went beyond what one expects to see in a dog's eyes, something that looked remarkably like understanding. 3 weeks after the rescue, a small group gathered in a conference room at the regional forestry headquarters. The walls were covered with photos from the rescue operation, printouts of video frames showing Max and Hira's coordinated movements, and diagrams analyzing their behavior patterns. Claus, now recovered enough to return to light duties, sat at the table alongside Thomas, Dieter, Anna, and Dr. Hoffman from the university's Animal Behavior Department. "I've reviewed the footage over 50 times, Dr. Hoffman said, adjusting his glasses as he pointed to a screen showing the dog's pincer movement against Lucas. "What you witnessed goes beyond any trained behavior we've documented in search and rescue dogs." Claus nodded slowly. "They saved my life. if they hadn't found me when they did. Dr. Hoffman clicked to the next slide, showing a slow-motion sequence of the two German Shepherds moving in perfect synchronization, despite being 15 feet apart, with no visible signals between them. "Look here," he said, pointing. No eye contact, no vocalization, yet their movements mirror each other exactly. It's as if they were following a predetermined plan. Or communicating in a way we can't detect, Anna suggested. Thomas leaned forward, his forehead creased in thought. Could they have smelled Lucas nearby, known he was dangerous? Certainly possible, Dr. Hoffman agreed. But that doesn't explain the tactical nature of their response. Even police dogs trained for apprehension don't execute coordinated attacks like this. Dieter had been quietly watching Max and Hera, who were lying calmly in the corner of the room. Since that day, they've been completely normal, just regular search and rescue dogs again. Maybe it was something about that particular location, Klaus suggested hesitantly. While I was tied there, I kept having strange thoughts, like the forest was somehow alive around me. The room fell silent for a moment. The symbols Lucas carved into the tree, Thomas said finally. They've been identified as very old pagan markings dating back hundreds of years. Similar carvings have been found in other parts of the Black Forest, always on the oldest trees. Dr. Hoffman looked uncomfortable with this turn in the conversation. Let's focus on what we can measure and analyze, he insisted. The dog's behavior shows remarkable problem-solving abilities and interspecies cooperation that we've simply never documented before. The meeting continued for another hour, with Dr. Hoffman explaining how the university wanted to conduct further studies with Max and Hera. They would create controlled scenarios to test the dog's ability to communicate and coordinate with each other. As everyone prepared to leave, Klaus approached Dieter and Anna. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the two German Shepherds. They nodded, and Klaus knelt awkwardly in front of Max and Hera, his injuries still causing him some stiffness. The dogs watched him intently, their intelligent eyes fixed on his face. "Thank you," he said simply, reaching out to gently pet them both. "I don't care what science says. You two knew exactly what you were doing that day." To everyone's surprise, both dogs moved forward at the same moment, each gently placing a paw on one of Klaus's knees, as if acknowledging his words. In the months that followed, Max and Hera became minor celebrities in search and rescue circles. Dr. Hoffman's preliminary studies showed that they consistently demonstrated abilities beyond what training alone could explain. They could solve complex problems together without visible communication and showed an uncanny ability to detect human intentions that even other highly trained dogs missed. Klaus returned to his duties as a forest ranger but volunteered regularly with the K9 training program. The experience had changed him profoundly. He spoke often about the connection between humans, animals, and the ancient forests they'd both protected. On the one-year anniversary of his rescue, Klaus visited the training center where Dieter and Anna worked with a new generation of search dogs. The training session that day focused on teaching young dogs to track missing persons through difficult terrain. As Klaus watched Max and Hera demonstrate the search patterns for the younger dogs, he noticed something that sent chills down his spine. When passing certain trees, both German Shepherds would briefly pause, raise their heads, and seem to listen to something no human could hear. Later, as they walked back to the vehicles, Klaus quietly asked Dieter, "Do you ever wonder what they actually see when they look into the forest? What they might understand that we don't?" Dieter watched his canine partner trotting contentedly beside him. "Every single day," he admitted. "And I've come to believe that Max and Hera didn't just find you that day in the forest." He paused, searching for the right words. "In some way, I still don't understand. I think they were guided to you." As if hearing his name, Max looked up at his handler, his intelligent eyes reflecting the afternoon sun. And for just a moment, it seemed like he was smiling, keeping his secrets safe behind those knowing, gentle eyes.